She never imagined the person she loved most would be the one to break her heart so completely. Aurora had believed she was living a perfect life, a successful, charming husband who served as CEO of a thriving company, and a best friend she trusted like a sister. There was laughter, love, and what felt like unshakable trust, until, in a single, brutal moment, that beautiful life collapsed into a nightmare of betrayal. On a rainy evening, an uneasy feeling led her to a truth she wasn't prepared to face. Her husband, Grayson, had broken their marriage vows in the most devastating way, and with her best friend, Vivian. The discovery struck like lightning, leaving her shattered and breathless. Betrayal by the two people she trusted most felt like a cruel twist of fate, a wound so deep she wasn't sure she could ever recover. Aurora's world crumbled that night. In the aftermath came an avalanche of emotions: shock, rage, sorrow, and an overwhelming sense of loss. How could the man who once looked into her eyes with love now gaze at someone else with the same intensity? How could the friend who knew her secrets and dreams become the agent of her heartbreak? It felt as if the ground had given way beneath her, and she was falling into darkness. Standing there, drenched in tears and disbelief, one question echoed in her mind: why her? What had she done to deserve this? She didn't have the answer then. All she knew was that life, as she knew it, had changed forever. What she could not yet see was that this ending was also a beginning, a story of finding strength, discovering true love, and learning life's most important lessons amid the ruins of a broken heart. Welcome, dear friends. Tonight, we're opening the pages of heartbreak, betrayal, and the kind of strength that rises from ashes. If you believe in stories that remind us of the power of love and resilience, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Let's walk through this journey together. Let's go back to how it all began. Aurora's life before that fateful night could easily have been the envy of many. In her mid-20s, she had married Grayson, the man of her dreams. Grayson was a charismatic and ambitious entrepreneur who worked his way up to become the CEO of a successful tech company. He was the kind of husband who brought her flowers for no reason and whisked her away on surprise weekend getaways. Together, they lived in a beautiful home in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. To anyone looking from the outside, they were the picture of happiness and success. Aurora herself was no idle housewife either. With a degree in marketing, she had once been an integral part of Grayson's company during its startup days. She stood by his side through late nights and early pitches, helping refine his business plans and organizing corporate events. When the company took off, she chose to step back and focus on building a loving home, believing she would soon fill it with children. The couple had been talking about starting a family, and Aurora dreamed of the day she'd become a mother. Every night, she went to bed feeling grateful for the life she had, one filled with love, comfort, and the promise of a bright future. Equally important in Aurora's life was her best friend, Vivian. They had been inseparable since college, sharing secrets, dreams, and every little drama of life. Vivian was practically part of the family. She was Aurora's maid of honor. At the wedding, and a frequent guest at Aurora and Grayson's dinner table. With her quick wit and infectious laughter, Vivian could bring a smile to anyone's face. Aurora trusted her completely, and often said Vivian was like the sister she never had. It wasn't unusual for the trio, Aurora, Grayson, and Vivian, to spend time together. Sometimes Grayson would invite Vivian to join them at social events or casual dinners, wanting his wife to be happy, surrounded by people she loved. Aurora felt lucky that her husband got along so well with her best friend. They would all joke that they were like the Three Musketeers, always ready to support each other. If someone had told Aurora that anything could ever break this bond, she would have laughed it off. Looking back, there were a few subtle signs that not everything was as perfect as it seemed. Grayson was working longer hours, and Vivian had been dropping by more often, even when Aurora wasn't home. Yet any fleeting doubt Aurora had was quickly dispelled by their innocent explanations and her own deep trust. She never truly suspected a thing. In those golden days, Aurora often counted her blessings. She had a loving husband, a devoted best friend, and exciting plans for the future. Aurora lived each day in contentment, utterly unaware that the storm clouds of betrayal were gathering, ready to strike when she least expected it. It happened on a chilly, rainy evening that would forever divide Aurora's life into a before and after. That day, Aurora remembered feeling a strange knot in her stomach. Grayson had called earlier to say he'd be working late at the office, finalizing an important deal. He told her not to wait up for dinner. Normally, Aurora would take him at his word, but something about his tone was off. A hesitation, perhaps, or the way he rushed off the phone. Hoping to brighten his long day, Aurora decided to surprise Grayson at work with his favorite takeout from the little Italian bistro they loved. Driving through the pouring rain, Aurora's heart pounded inexplicably. Why am I so nervous? She wondered. He's just working late. Yet, an intuition she couldn't shake kept growing. Stronger. When she arrived at Grayson's office building, most of the windows were dark. The security guard recognized Aurora and let her in, but upon reaching the floor of Grayson's private office, she found it empty. The lights were off and his door was locked. Confused, Aurora tried calling his cell phone. No answer. She tried Vivian next, thinking perhaps Vivian might have heard from him. Vivian didn't pick up either. The unease in Aurora's chest flared into dread. Clutching the takeout bag, Aurora walked back to her car under the drumming rain, trying to calm her racing mind. Maybe he stepped out for a late meeting, she reasoned. Maybe Vivian's phone died. Yet each excuse felt more strained than the last. As she slid into the driver's seat, a flash of lightning illuminated her phone, which had lit up with a new message. It was from Vivian. "Hey, just saw you called. All okay? I'm home, feeling a bit under the weather tonight. Let's talk tomorrow." Aurora read the text and her brow furrowed. Vivian rarely got sick, and that she was suddenly under the weather, on a night when Grayson was unreachable, felt too coincidental. Aurora's fingers trembled slightly as she typed back, "Oh no, sorry you're not feeling well. Need anything? Soup? Medicine? I can come by." She stared at the screen, but there was no immediate response. Determination, or was it desperation, took hold of her. "I'll go check on Vivian," she thought. "If she's sick, at least I can help, and maybe Grayson will be home by the time I'm back." Vivian's apartment was across town. Aurora drove through the storm, the windshield wipers working overtime. Her mind raced with scenarios, each more anxious than the last. She hated that she was even entertaining the possibility that something was wrong, but the threads weren't adding up. As she neared Vivian's street, Aurora's heart lurched. Parked conspicuously under a street lamp was Grayson's black luxury sedan. There was no mistaking it. The custom license plate read Grayson 1. Aurora's hands turned cold on the steering wheel. She pulled over a short distance away, barely breathing as she stared at the car. Rain pelted the windshield in torrents. A million thoughts flooded her mind, none of them good. Why would Grayson be here at Vivian's place, at this hour, when she's supposedly sick? Aurora's chest tightened. Part of her wanted to turn around, drive home, and pretend she never saw any of this. But another part, a stronger part, demanded the truth. Aurora stepped out into the rain, forgetting even to grab her umbrella. She was soaked within seconds, but she didn't care. With hesitant steps, she approached Vivian's apartment building. The front door was unlocked, likely left ajar by someone in a hurry. Aurora slipped in quietly and climbed the stairs to the second floor where Vivian's apartment was. The hallway was dimly lit and silent, except for the pounding of Aurora's heart in her ears. At Vivian's door, Aurora noticed it was slightly open. Through the small gap, she could see a sliver of the living room. The lights were on. She could hear muffled voices, a man's low murmur and a woman's soft giggle. That was all the confirmation her worst fears needed. Her hands shaking, Aurora pushed the door open and stepped inside. Nothing could have prepared her for the sight that greeted her. On the couch, illuminated by the warm glow of a lamp, were Grayson and Vivian, locked in an intimate embrace. Grayson's jacket was off, and Vivian's hair was tousled as if fingers had been running through it. They were kissing, deeply, passionately, the kind of kiss that Aurora knew all too well, because not long ago those kisses were meant for her. The soft click of the door shutting made them break apart. Grayson turned, and his eyes went wide with shock as he saw his wife standing there, drenched and trembling. Vivian gasped, leaping to her feet. For a heartbeat, no one moved or spoke. The only sound was the patter of rain on the balcony glass and Aurora's own breathing, coming in ragged, hurt bursts. "Aurora," Grayson started, his voice low and strained. "This isn't what it looks like." It was the oldest cliché in the book, and hearing it from her husband's lips sparked something in Aurora. A mix of fury and pain erupted inside her. "How could you?" Aurora's voice came out cracked, barely above a whisper, yet it was laced with raw hurt. She looked from Grayson to Vivian, her eyes brimming with tears. "How could you? Both of you?" Her words faltered as a sob rose in her throat. Vivian stepped forward, arms half raised as if to placate her. She was wrapped in a silk robe, cheeks flushed. "Aurora, I'm so sorry. We didn't mean for you to find out like this." Aurora almost let out a bitter laugh at the absurdity. "To find out like this?" she repeated, her voice rising. "When did you plan for me to find out, Vivian? Were you ever going to tell me that you've been sleeping with my husband?" The word husband came out in a snarl, dripping with betrayal. Grayson ran a hand through his hair, looking agitated and guilty. "I never wanted to hurt you, Aurora," he said, stepping toward her. The scent of his cologne, once comforting, now nauseating, mixed with the smell of wine and Vivian's perfume in the air. "It just happened." He glanced at Vivian, whose eyes were cast down in shame or perhaps fear. Aurora held up her hand, stepping back as he approached. The betrayal felt like a physical wall between them. She shook her head in disbelief. Don't come near me," she managed to choke out, tears mingling with the rainwater on her face. "It just happened? You accidentally fell into bed with my best friend? Is that your excuse?" Grayson's face hardened a little at her words. "We didn't plan this," he insisted, a defensive edge creeping into his tone. "Vivian and we never meant to hurt you. I know it's terrible, but sometimes things change. He struggled for words, and in that silence, Aurora felt the knife twist deeper. Vivian wiped a tear from her own face. "Aurora, please believe me," she pleaded softly. "I never set out to betray you. Grayson and it was a mistake, but—" "A mistake?" Aurora interjected, anger now flaring through her grief. "You were my sister, Vivian. I trusted you with everything. You come into my home, you smile at me, and all the while you're—" Her voice broke as she gestured at the two of them. Aurora's gaze then locked onto Grayson. "And you, I gave you my heart, my loyalty, stood by you through everything. And this is how you repay me." The hurt in her voice made Grayson flinch. Was every "I love you" a lie? Grayson stepped forward again, desperation in his eyes. "Aurora, I did love you. I still do, but—" "Don't you dare say you still love me," Aurora snapped, a fresh tear streaking down her face. "Loving me means respecting me, being faithful to me. You don't destroy the person you love." For a moment, only the sound of Aurora's soft sobbing filled the room. Vivian looked away, wrapping her arms around herself. Grayson's shoulders slumped, as if the weight of what he'd done was finally crashing down on him. Aurora's voice dropped to a whisper as she asked the question burning in her heart. "Why? Please, just tell me why." Her eyes searched Grayson's face, the face she knew so well, but suddenly found completely unfamiliar. He had no real answer. His silence spoke volumes. "Were you ever going to tell me?" Aurora asked quietly. "Or were you just going to keep sneaking behind my back until—" "What? Until you got tired of both worlds?" Grayson's continued silence was answer enough. Aurora realized in that moment that perhaps he never intended to come clean at all. Wiping her face with a trembling hand, Aurora steadied herself. A steely resolve began to harden within her chest, even as her heart was breaking. "I want you to leave," she said softly, but firmly. Grayson looked up, confused. "What?" "Leave," Aurora repeated, pointing toward the door. Her voice gained strength. "Go, both of you. I can't even look at you right now." The pain in her eyes had transformed into an icy fury. "You two deserve each other." Vivian let out a small sob. "Aurora, please." But Aurora cut her off, raising her hand. "No, you don't get to cry. You don't get to ask for forgiveness. Not now. Just go. I hope it was worth it. I hope both of you are worth the wreckage you've made of my life." Grayson stood there a moment longer, as if weighing the situation. Perhaps in that instant, Aurora had hoped he would fight for her, beg her to forgive him, drop to his knees in remorse. But instead, he just nodded numbly. I'll send someone for my things," he muttered, his voice thick with regret that came far too late. He grabbed his jacket from the couch and avoided Aurora's eyes as he moved toward the door. Vivian hesitated, wanting to reach out to Aurora, but thought better of it when Aurora glared at her. In a meek voice, Vivian whispered, "I am so sorry," before following Grayson to the door. Aurora stood motionless in the living room as her husband and her best friend, two pillars of her world, walked out together into the rain. The door closed behind them with a decisive click that echoed in Aurora's ears. The moment they were gone, Aurora's strength crumbled. The takeout bag she had been clutching slipped from her numb fingers and dropped to the floor, its contents spilling out. With a broken cry, Aurora sank to her knees amidst the scattered dinner, finally letting the tears come in heaving sobs. She had never felt so alone. In the quiet of Vivian's apartment, accompanied only by the storm outside, Aurora wept for the loss of her husband, the death of her closest friendship, and the utter devastation of the life she thought she knew. In that moment, she believed this was the end of everything good in her world. The days following the betrayal were a blur of pain for Aurora. She returned to an empty home, a home that suddenly felt cold and full of ghosts of happier times. Grayson didn't come back that night, or the next. Instead, a few days later, Aurora received a courier envelope containing divorce papers. There was no personal note, only the clinical language of lawyers dividing up their lives on paper. Reading the documents, Aurora learned that Grayson was eager to move on. He offered her the house and a modest financial settlement, likely an attempt to soothe his guilt. But every dollar in that offer felt like blood money. Aurora couldn't bear the thought of accepting anything from him. In her anguish, she left the papers untouched on the coffee table, unable to confront the finality of it all. Aurora withdrew from the world. She stopped going out, except when absolutely necessary, ignored calls from acquaintances, who had begun to hear whispers of the split, and spent long hours curled up in bed. Nights were the worst. She would wake up reaching for a husband who wasn't there, the pain washing over her anew each time reality set in. The betrayal had stolen not only her partners in life, but also her sense of self. Who was she, if not Grayson's wife or Vivian's best friend? The roles by which she defined herself had been erased in an instant. A couple of weeks passed in this fog of despair. Aurora's mother, Marisol, eventually came to check on her after repeated unanswered phone calls. As soon as Marisol saw her daughter's pale face and hollow eyes, she enveloped Aurora in a warm embrace. Aurora broke down all over again, sobbing in her mother's arms like a hurt child. In between tears, she spilled out the whole story of Grayson and Vivian's betrayal. Her mother's face reflected heartbreak and anger on her daughter's behalf, but she said little, instead just stroking Aurora's hair and comforting her. Over the next several days, Marisol gently helped Aurora begin to pick up the pieces. She cooked simple meals, opened the curtains to let light into the house, and coaxed Aurora into taking small steps, like showering or sitting outside on the porch for fresh air. At first, Aurora moved like a ghost, mechanically doing whatever her mother asked with blank eyes. But Marisol's steady presence was a lifeline, reminding Aurora that someone still cared deeply for her. It was during this time that Aurora first suspected something was different about her own body. She was exhausted beyond the expected depression. Simple chores left her winded. She felt nauseous in the mornings, unable to keep even dry toast down. Marisol noticed it too. "Aurora, honey, you look a little flushed. Are you feeling all right?" Her mother asked one morning, concern etched on her face. "I'm just tired, Everything is so hard right now, Aurora sighed, attributing it all to stress. But a quiet voice in the back of her mind began to whisper a possibility she hadn't considered. Her cycle was late, not that she had been keeping track amid the chaos, but she suddenly realized her period hadn't come. At first, she dismissed the thought. It was not unusual for intense stress to disrupt a menstrual cycle. However, as another nauseating wave hit her that morning, Aurora grew uneasy. The possibility that she could be pregnant, that she could be carrying Grayson's child, dawned on her slowly, and she wasn't sure whether to feel terrified or hopeful. They had been trying to conceive, hadn't they? A memory surfaced of a tender night with Grayson about a month before, the fallout, full of whispered dreams about starting a family. It seemed like a lifetime ago. With trembling resolve, Aurora decided to find out the truth. She didn't tell Marisol her suspicion just yet. Instead, she went into the bathroom and found an old pregnancy test kit she'd bought back when they were trying, tucked under the sink. Her heart pounded as she followed the instructions with shaky hands. Those minutes waiting for the result were some of the longest of her life. She silently prayed, not even sure what outcome she was hoping for. If it was positive, what then? How could she handle a baby in the midst of this heartbreak? But if it was negative, strangely, that thought hurt too, in a way she couldn't explain. Perhaps because a negative result would mean that all she had left of her marriage was truly nothing but pain. When Aurora finally dared to look at the test, her breath caught in her throat. 2 bright pink lines. Positive. She was pregnant. Aurora? Her mother's gentle knock on the door made her jump. "Are you all right in there?" Aurora opened the door, her eyes wide with shock and tears forming anew. Wordlessly, she handed the test stick to her mother. Marisol gasped softly as she understood. In the next second, Aurora found herself in another tight, reassuring hug. This time her tears were a mix of fear, confusion, and a strange, fragile joy. "I'm here, darling," Marisol whispered. "Whatever you decide, you're not alone." Over the following days, Aurora wrestled with her emotions. This pregnancy was an unexpected ray of light in her darkest hour, but it was also tangled up with immeasurable pain. The baby, or babies, a small voice added. It had occurred to her that twins ran in her family, was Grayson's, a man who had betrayed her so deeply. Could she bear that reminder? On one particularly hard night, drowning in sorrow, Aurora even found herself considering the unthinkable, whether she should keep the baby at all. She felt guilty the moment the thought crossed her mind, because deep down she had always yearned to be a mother. Was it fair to bring an innocent life into her broken world? Would she be strong enough to raise a child, or twins, alone? In the end, it was the tiny flutter of hope the life inside her ignited that guided Aurora's decision. One morning, she had a prenatal appointment to confirm the pregnancy and get an ultrasound, and her mother went with her. Aurora's heart thudded as the doctor performed the scan, and then came the whooshing sound of a heartbeat, no, 2 heartbeats, echoing in the examination room. Aurora's eyes widened, and she turned to her mother, who was equally astonished and starting to smile. "Twins," the doctor confirmed with a kind smile. "It looks like you're going to have 2 babies. They both appear healthy and strong." Aurora burst into tears on the spot, but for the first time in weeks, these were not tears of sorrow. As she heard those 2 tiny hearts beating in unison, something shifted inside her. An overwhelming wave of protectiveness and love washed over her. These babies were her flesh and blood, a part of her and a part of the future she had dreamed of, a future that hadn't been completely stolen after all. Yes, they were also Grayson's children, but they were blameless in what had happened. They deserved life, love, and a chance to exist in this world. Right then and there, Aurora made a vow to herself and to the little ones growing inside her. She would not let this betrayal define the rest of her life. She would become the mother her children deserved, and she would do it on her own if she had to. Grayson would not know about the pregnancy. He had forfeited the right to that knowledge when he walked out with Vivian. Aurora decided she didn't want anything from him, not his money, not his name, and certainly not his pity. She would raise these babies out of love and on her own terms. That day marked a turning point. Aurora went home with a hand resting protectively over her belly, feeling for the first time that a tiny sliver of light had broken through her darkness. She still felt the sting of betrayal, and the road ahead would not be easy, but at least now she had a reason to rise each morning. She had 2 little heartbeats motivating her to rebuild her life. In the midst of heartbreak, hope was growing, literally, and Aurora clung to that hope with all her might. If your heart is already moved by Aurora's strength in the face of betrayal, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And while you're at it, subscribe and hit the bell, so you never miss the moments when love and resilience turn pain into power. True to her promise to herself, Aurora gradually transformed her life in the months that followed. She signed the divorce papers, choosing not to contest anything. What Grayson didn't realize was that Aurora quietly declined most of the settlement he offered. Instead, she negotiated to keep only the house and a small sum, enough to support her through the pregnancy. She couldn't stand the thought of living off his money. That house, once a symbol of their love, now felt tainted. After much thought, Aurora sold it. The proceeds provided her with a financial cushion, and letting go of that physical space helped her emotionally close a chapter. With her mother's help, she found a cozy, smaller home in a neighboring town. It was nothing like the grand house she left behind, but it was hers, earned with her own choices, and it felt right. As Aurora's belly grew, so did her resolve. Each morning, she would stand in front of the mirror, see the woman with the round belly and determined eyes looking back, and remind herself, I am strong. I can do this. She set up a small home office in her new living room and revisited her professional skills. Back in her college and early career days, Aurora had been a sharp marketer with a creative spark. She decided to freelance as a marketing consultant, offering services from home so she could both earn an income and prepare for the twins' arrival. At first, it was challenging. She had to rebuild her confidence and update her knowledge on the latest digital marketing trends. There were nights she stayed up late, reading articles and taking online courses, her hands resting protectively on her belly as if to draw strength from the lives growing inside her. Slowly but surely, Aurora landed her first few clients. A local bakery needed help with advertising their new line of pastries. An old acquaintance from her university was launching a boutique and needed social media buzz. Aurora poured herself into these projects. With each completed task, her confidence grew. The clients were impressed by her dedication and savvy ideas, and word began to spread. Her workload increased a little each week, not too much to overwhelm her, but enough to make her feel she was standing on her own 2 feet again. Aurora was earning her own money and proving to herself that she was far more than just someone's wife. During this time, Aurora also began to care for her own well-being again. She found solace in simple routines, like taking the twins on morning stroller jogs and weekend trips to the park. It was a quiet, resilient happiness she was building, not a fairy tale, but a real life forged from survival and strength. Aurora focused on the impending arrival of her babies, with a mix of nerves and determination. She converted a sunny corner of her bedroom into a makeshift nursery. It was modest, filled with second-hand baby furniture that she and her mother refurbished with cheerful paint and new linens. She chose 2 names after careful thought, ones that felt full of hope: Luna for the baby girl, after the moon that shines at night, and Leo for the baby boy, meaning lion, symbolizing courage. Preparing for Luna and Leo's arrival gave Aurora a sense of purpose beyond herself. She attended prenatal classes, practiced breathing exercises, and made a small circle of new acquaintances, other expectant mothers, which helped her feel less alone. The day Aurora gave birth was both the most exhausting and the most rewarding day of her life. After a tough labor, she brought 2 healthy babies into the world. When the nurse placed tiny Luna and Leo in her arms, Aurora's eyes overflowed with tears. They were perfect, a beautiful girl and boy with eyes that glimmered with innocence. In that moment, holding her children, Aurora felt an overwhelming flood of love wash over her. It washed away, if only briefly, every bit of hurt and betrayal. All that mattered were those two little faces gazing up at her. She promised them softly, "I will always protect you. I'll love you enough for both a mother and a father." The months that followed were a whirlwind. Caring for newborn twins was an around-the-clock challenge. Aurora slept in snatches when she could, and her days blurred into a cycle of feeding, burping, changing diapers and rocking babies to sleep. There were moments she felt utterly drained, both physically and emotionally. Yet, even in those hardest nights, when both babies cried and she felt on the verge of tears herself, Aurora held on. She remembered how she had survived the worst night of her life and how far she had come since then. Compared to that pain, midnight feedings and colicky cries were trials she could handle. Marisol stayed with Aurora for a few weeks after the birth, teaching her tricks to calm fussy infants and making sure Aurora ate proper meals. With her mother's help, Aurora managed to get through the initial newborn chaos until she found her own rhythm. Eventually, Marisol returned home, and Aurora stood on her own as the sole caretaker of her little family. It was daunting, but she discovered a well of resilience she never knew she had. As Luna and Leo grew from tiny infants into babbling babies, Aurora resumed taking on work bit by bit. She would set the twins in a playpen next to her desk and work on marketing plans during their nap times. It wasn't easy balancing work and motherhood, but every small success felt like a victory. The first time she managed to soothe both crying babies while simultaneously finishing a client's project by the deadline, she felt like she could conquer the world. Over time, Aurora's efforts bore fruit. By the twins' first birthday, her consulting work had blossomed into a steady small business. She even hired a part-time assistant, a fellow stay-at-home mom, to help with administrative tasks. Financially, Aurora was becoming secure. She could pay her bills, keep the household running, and provide for Luna and Leo without any support from Grayson. Emotionally, she found joy again, in her children's laughter, in the quiet victories of daily life, and in the knowledge that she had rebuilt herself from ashes. Aurora often reflected on how grateful she was to have held on through the darkness, because the dawn that followed was more beautiful than she ever imagined. She had 2 beautiful children, a growing business, and the unwavering support of her mother and a few genuine friends she had made along the way. She lacked nothing essential, and she refused to let bitterness keep a hold on her heart. Little did Aurora know, the next chapters of her life were about to bring new people into her world. Aurora had not been looking for romance. In fact, the thought of loving someone new was daunting after all she'd endured. Her life was full with work and her 2 little ones. Yet, as fate would have it, love found her when she least expected it. It started with a chance meeting at a community networking event for small business owners. Aurora hesitated to attend the meetup. She hadn't been on a night out since before the twins were born. But a friendly client insisted she come, suggesting it could help expand her business. Marisol agreed to babysit Luna and Leo for the evening, practically shooing Aurora out the door with a smile. "Go, have fun. You deserve a break, honey," her mother urged. Dressed in a simple yet elegant navy dress that made her feel confident, Aurora arrived at a local cafe where the event was held. Surrounded by people chatting about startups and projects, she felt a bit like a fish out of water at first. But soon she found herself in a pleasant conversation with a small circle of entrepreneurs sharing experiences about marketing challenges. That's when she met Xavier. Xavier was a software developer turned small business coach, there to give a short talk on managing work-life balance. Tall, with kind hazel eyes and a warm smile, he had an easygoing demeanor that put those around him at ease. After his talk, he struck up a conversation with Aurora, intrigued by her questions about balancing a business with single motherhood. She had mentioned in passing that she had young kids at home. Instead of being put off, Xavier seemed genuinely impressed. "Running a business while raising twins alone? That's remarkable," he said sincerely. Aurora found herself relaxing in his company. They discovered plenty of common interests and soon were chatting easily, laughter coming naturally. When Aurora mentioned she had to head home to relieve her mom from babysitting duty, Xavier walked her to her car. He politely asked if he could keep in touch to discuss a potential collaboration. One of his clients needed marketing help, he said. Aurora agreed, exchanging business cards, but part of her fluttered at the thought that this might be more than just business interest. Over the next few weeks, Xavier and Aurora spoke frequently, first about the project, which turned into a successful marketing campaign for a local charity, then gradually about more personal things. They met for coffee to brainstorm ideas, and coffee turned into lingering chats about their lives and aspirations. Aurora learned that Xavier had never been married. He had dedicated much of his early 30s to building his career and helping raise a younger sibling after their parents passed, which explained his nurturing nature. He, in turn, learned about Aurora's twins and saw the light that came into her eyes when she spoke of them. From the first time he met Luna and Leo, Xavier's gentle, playful nature immediately won the twins over. Seeing him interact so naturally with her children warmed Aurora's heart and reawakened feelings of hope and affection that she hadn't felt in a long time. As months went by, what began as friendship between Aurora and Xavier blossomed into something deeper. They never rushed things. Xavier understood that Aurora had been hurt badly. He was patient and content to let their bond grow naturally. For Aurora, Xavier's presence was like a balm. He was consistent, respectful, and kind. He never pried about her past beyond what she shared, but he listened intently when one evening she did choose to open up about it. They were sitting on her porch after the twins were asleep, sharing a cup of tea under the stars. In a hesitant voice, Aurora told Xavier the outline of her past, that she'd been married and betrayed, and that her children's father was the husband who left her. She didn't delve into every painful detail, but her voice trembled as she spoke. Xavier's face showed empathy, not pity, and he gently placed his hand over hers. "You didn't deserve that," he said softly. "None of it. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly strong for everything you've done since." Aurora felt a tear roll down her cheek, but it was a tear of relief. It felt good to share a piece of her heart and not be judged or doubted. In that moment, she realized she cared for Xavier deeply, more than just as a friend. The way he accepted her, scars and all, made her heart begin to open in ways she never thought it would again. Not long after that night, Xavier officially asked Aurora on a real date. "I'd love to take you to that new art exhibit downtown, if you're up for it," he said, almost nervously, as if worried she might say no. Aurora found his slight nervousness endearing, and she said yes with a bright smile. Marisol happily babysat again, winking as Aurora left for the evening in a flutter of excitement she hadn't felt in ages. The date was wonderful. Strolling through the art gallery, they chatted about their interpretations of the paintings, joking and debating light-heartedly. Afterwards, they had dinner at a cozy restaurant where conversation flowed as easily as the candlelight between them. By the time Xavier walked Aurora to her door that night, it felt like the most natural thing in the world when he gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and leaned in. Their first kiss was sweet and gentle under the soft glow of the porch light. For Aurora, that tender moment was a reaffirmation that her heart was still capable of love and trust. She felt a spark, something she feared had been extinguished 2 years ago, flicker back to life. As their relationship deepened, Aurora balanced love with motherhood and work with newfound happiness. Xavier gradually became a welcome presence in her children's lives. Luna and Leo adored their new uncle Xavier, and Aurora often found herself marveling at how loving and natural he was with them, moments that made her wonder how she became so lucky after so much pain. Of course, Aurora had her moments of doubt and fear. There were nights she lay awake, heart pounding, worried that maybe this happiness wouldn't last, that maybe it would all be ripped away as before. When she voiced these fears tentatively to Xavier, he responded with reassuring honesty. "I know you've been hurt deeply," he told her, holding her hands in his. "I can't promise what the future holds, but I can promise that I care about you and the kids, and I will do everything in my power never to hurt you. Trust is something we'll build day by day, and I'm not going anywhere, Aurora." And he meant it. Trust was indeed building brick by brick. By the time 2 years had passed since that terrible night of betrayal, Aurora's life was almost unrecognizable compared to the shattered woman who had knelt on Vivian's floor in tears. She had a fulfilling career, 2 beautiful toddlers who were the lights of her life, and now a loving partner who respected and cherished her. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined her daily existence. Aurora often reflected on how grateful she was that she had held on through the darkness, because the dawn that followed was more wonderful than she ever imagined. Yet, there was one final piece of Aurora's past that needed resolution, one loose end she knew she would have to face. She didn't know it yet, but very soon she would come face to face with Grayson again. This time, Aurora would be meeting him as a completely different woman, stronger, wiser, and with her head held high. While Aurora was rebuilding her life and finding happiness again, Grayson's new life with Vivian was crumbling. In the beginning, Grayson tried to convince himself that he'd made the right choice, but guilt shadowed him every day. Trust between him and Vivian was thin, each knew the other was capable of betrayal. Grayson often caught himself thinking about Aurora, the love he'd lost and the family moments he would never experience. As months passed, the passionate affair that drew Grayson and Vivian together cooled into tension and resentment. Small disagreements turned into frequent arguments. Grayson grew moody and distant, haunted by regret. Vivian, feeling his heart was elsewhere, became insecure and controlling. Both of them were living under the weight of what they'd done, and it poisoned their relationship from the start. Eventually, the cracks widened beyond repair. Vivian, unhappy and distrustful, sought comfort elsewhere and began an affair with another man. When Grayson discovered this betrayal, he was devastated. The sting of being cheated on by Vivian gave him a bitter taste of the pain he had inflicted on Aurora. It was as if karma had come full circle. He had lost the 2 people for whom he'd sacrificed everything. Alone and heartbroken, Grayson finally confronted the magnitude of his mistakes. In this low point, he also learned a stunning truth. Vivian let slip during a heated argument that Aurora had been pregnant when the marriage ended. Grayson had children, twins, that he never even knew about. The revelation hit him harder than anything else. All his wrong choices now stood between him and a family he never knew he had. Grayson realized he had traded away true happiness for a fleeting fantasy, and now he had nothing to show for it but remorse. Losing Vivian to her own infidelity and learning he had missed the birth of his children broke whatever remained of his pride. He knew he had to seek forgiveness, if not for himself, then at least to be able to look his children in the eye someday. It was time to face Aurora, apologize for everything, and hope, however faintly, that he could make amends for the damage he caused. Aurora's chance to close the door on her past came one crisp autumn afternoon. She received a phone call from a number she didn't recognize. On the other end was Grayson. Hearing his voice after so long sent a jolt through her, but she was no longer the fragile woman she once was. He sounded nervous and contrite. He explained that he had learned about the twins and pleaded to meet, if only to apologize and perhaps see his children once. Aurora's initial reaction was protective. Her first instinct was to shield Luna and Leo from any potential hurt. But after discussing it with her mother and with Xavier, she decided that meeting Grayson could be an opportunity to finally put the past to rest. She agreed to meet him in a public park, one where she often took the children to play. It was a place where she felt comfortable and safe. On the day of the meeting, Aurora arrived at the park with the twins, accompanied by Xavier for support. They spotted Grayson sitting on a bench under a maple tree, leaves orange and red drifting down around him. He stood up as they approached, and Aurora was struck by how different he looked. There was a heaviness about him, a mix of hope and despair in his eyes, as if he'd been carrying regret like a weight on his shoulders. Aurora took a deep breath and told the twins to play on the nearby swing set within eyesight. Xavier offered to push them on the swings to give Aurora and Grayson privacy to talk, and Aurora gave him a grateful nod. As the children's laughter echoed from a short distance away, Aurora faced Grayson. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Grayson began softly. His eyes were already glistening as he looked at her. You look well." "I am well," Aurora replied, her voice calm and steady. It was true. Standing here in front of the man who once broke her completely, she felt no urge to cry or shout. She felt steady. "What did you want to say, Grayson?" He swallowed hard. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I know that word isn't enough, not for what I did. But I need to say it to you, Aurora. I'm sorry for betraying you, for breaking our marriage, for everything. Not a day goes by that I don't regret it." Aurora studied him. In his eyes, she saw genuine remorse and pain. A part of her, the part that had loved him once, found it sad to see him so broken. But she also remembered the nights of tears and the feeling of hitting rock bottom because of his choices. "It hurt, Grayson, more than anything ever hurt in my life," she replied quietly. "You didn't just cheat on me. You shattered my trust, my sense of self. You left me to pick up the pieces alone." Grayson nodded, tears spilling now. "I know, and you had every right to hate me. I hated myself. I still do, when I think of what I lost." He glanced toward the playground where little Luna and Leo were giggling as they swung, Xavier gently pushing them and laughing along. Grayson's face twisted in a mix of sorrow and longing. "I lost the chance to see them being born, their first steps, their first words. I don't deserve any forgiveness. I know that. But I want you to know I am so proud of you, Aurora. You've built a beautiful life for them. And I'm grateful that you brought them into the world." Aurora's heart softened slightly hearing those words. She followed his gaze to their children. They indeed were beautiful and happy. All she'd ever wanted for them. "They're amazing kids," she said with a gentle smile. "Smart and kind and full of joy." An awkward pause lingered, filled by the distant sound of children playing and leaves rustling in the breeze. Grayson took a shaky breath. "I have no right to ask anything of you. But could I maybe meet them? Just once, at least? I don't want to confuse or disrupt their life. His voice broke. "I just want to see them up close, to hear their voices call me. Maybe not. Dad, they don't know me, but maybe I can at least tell them hello." Aurora was silent for a long moment. Her protective instincts warred with a sense of compassion. She had worked so hard to create a stable life for her twins, free of the turmoil of her past. Introducing Grayson could bring questions and possibly pain if he didn't stay in their lives. Yet looking at him now, she saw not the arrogant CEO who left her, but a man truly burdened with regret. She remembered something she once heard. Forgiving someone is as much for oneself as for the person who hurt you. Aurora realized she had already, in her heart, let go of most of her anger toward Grayson over time. Perhaps this meeting was as much for her closure as it was for him. "They're only 2 years old," Aurora said slowly. "They don't really understand who their father is. To them, they've never had one. Aside from maybe Xavier." She met Grayson's eyes firmly. "If I let you meet them, it can't be just once, and then you disappear. I won't have them get attached to someone, only to be hurt if that person walks away." Grayson straightened, wiping his face. I wouldn't walk away," he said earnestly. "If you allow it, I'll do anything to be there for them in whatever capacity you think is best, even if it's just as a family friend they see occasionally at first. I'll take whatever you're willing to give." Aurora appreciated that he placed the decision entirely in her hands. In that moment, she realized she felt no hatred toward Grayson anymore. That heavy bitterness had been replaced by a calm resolve and even a touch of pity. She had grown far beyond the woman who was broken by his betrayal. "I'm not making any promises, except one: I will always do what's best for them," Aurora finally said. "So, we'll start slow. You can meet them now, briefly as a friend. We'll see how it goes. And only if you prove dependable and consistent, maybe you can be part of their lives in a more defined role." Her tone was gentle but firm. She was giving him a chance, but on her terms, and with her children's well-being as the priority. Grayson nodded fervently, gratitude evident in his teary eyes. "Thank you. Thank you. I swear I'll do whatever it takes to earn even a little of their trust." Aurora gestured for Xavier to bring the twins over. As Xavier approached, holding little Leo's hand and carrying Luna, who had gotten. Shy at the sight of a stranger, Aurora felt a wave of pride and reassurance. She had a loving partner by her side, and 2 wonderful children. This was her family. Grayson, seeing Xavier up close for the first time, instinctively understood who he was. The 2 men exchanged a polite nod. There was no hostility, just an unspoken acknowledgement. Xavier had stepped in where Grayson had left a void. Aurora knelt down with the twins. She gently introduced them to Grayson by first name only. "Luna, Leo, this is Grayson. He's an old friend of Mummy's." The toddlers peered curiously at the unfamiliar man. Grayson crouched to their level, a tentative smile on his face despite the emotion welling in his eyes. "Hi, Luna." "Hi, Leo," he said softly. "It's very nice to meet you. Your mom has told me so much about you." Leo, ever the outgoing one, toddled forward and with the serious generosity of a 2-year-old, offered Grayson a small red leaf he had picked up earlier. "Leaf," the boy declared proudly. Grayson let out a soft, broken chuckle and accepted the gift as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you, buddy. It's a beautiful leaf." Luna hung back against Aurora's shoulder at first, thumb in mouth, eyes wide. Grayson didn't push, he just gave her a warm smile and a little wave. After a moment, Luna removed her thumb and gave a tiny, shy wave back. It was a small gesture, but it made Grayson's breath catch. They only spoke for a short while, a few gentle minutes where Grayson asked the twins their age. Leo held up 2 fingers seriously and their favorite colors, receiving toddler babble answers that made all the adults smile. Aurora stood by quietly, one arm around Luna and the other lightly touching Leo's back, with Xavier close at her side. It was a peaceful, almost surreal scene, one Aurora never imagined possible 2 years ago. Eventually, the children's attention drifted back toward the swings and slide. Not wanting to overwhelm them, Aurora allowed Luna and Leo to scamper back to play under Xavier's watchful eye. Grayson understood that was his cue that the visit was ending. He got to his feet, visibly reluctant to leave but respectful of Aurora's boundaries. He looked at Aurora with genuine gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you," he said simply, the weight of those 2 words evident in his voice. He then glanced at Xavier and added, "Thank you for being there for them." Xavier, holding the twins' hands a short distance away, nodded kindly. "They're great kids," he said, offering no further comment on the past. Aurora walked Grayson a few steps away, out of earshot of the children. "Take care of yourself, Grayson," she said, and there was a soft, sincere note in her voice. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was closure. Grayson managed a sad, small smile. He looked like a man unburdened, if only slightly, by the chance to apologize and meet his children. With one last longing glance toward Leo and Luna's joyful figures on the playground, he turned and walked down the path out of the park, the autumn leaves swirling around him. Aurora watched until his figure disappeared, feeling a complex mix of emotions, pity, relief, but above all, peace. As Aurora stood there, she realized she was no longer the woman defined by who had hurt her. She was defined by what she had overcome. She turned back to see Xavier now guiding Leo down the slide while Luna clapped her hands. Aurora's heart swelled with gratitude. She returned to her little family, scooping Luna into her arms and peppering her cheeks with kisses, making the girl squeal with laughter. Leo wrapped himself around Aurora's leg in a happy hug, not fully understanding the significance of what had just happened, but sensing the joy in his mother's demeanor. Xavier put an arm around Aurora's shoulders, and she leaned into him with a contented sigh. "You okay?" he asked gently, searching her face. Aurora smiled, feeling tears of relief pricking her eyes, but these tears were of happiness. "I'm more than okay," she replied, squeezing his hand. In that moment, she felt truly free. Together, the 4 of them sat on the grass for a while, watching the sky turn golden as the late afternoon sun began to set. The twins babbled excitedly about the falling leaves and the little birds hopping nearby, and Aurora soaked in every precious second. This was her life now. Not the life she once planned, perhaps, but one filled with love, honesty, and hard-won happiness. It wasn't a fairy tale in the traditional sense. It was better. It was real, and it was hers. Aurora had learned that life could be unpredictable and cruel, but also that it could bring unimaginable blessings when you hold on to hope. She had lost so much, but in losing it, she found herself and gained even more than she ever thought possible. And so, dear friends, from betrayal to blessing, Aurora's story reminds us that even the deepest wounds can give birth to the brightest futures. If you believe in second chances, healing, and love that conquers betrayal, share this story with someone you care about. Leave a heart in the comments and subscribe for more unforgettable journeys. Until next time, may love and strength always find you.